Guys, a lot to get into, especially with the New York Giants. And I think that's kind of where we have to start off right now. I mean, the Giants, obviously, Dave Gettleman retired. You could say that in quotation marks, but he was kind of pushed out. And then, which was weird, it wasn't on Monday like most coaches were fired. The Giants fired Joe Judge on Tuesday. Mike, I want to start off with you because, look, you've been around this team all season long. What's kind of your thoughts on these two moves and the Giants really starting over right now?
Look, these are two moves that absolutely needed to happen. Gettleman shouldn't even have been in this position this season. He should have been gone after the 2020 season, but that's a whole nother conversation that was already had and can be had for many years to follow. But these are just two moves that the Giants had to make. Joe Judge, after his second year, is fired. He's 10-22, 10-23, excuse me. In those two seasons, he was 6-10 in 2020 and 4-13 in 2021. And the 13 losses that the Giants had this year, most of them were ugly. They came from the Falcons week 2 or 3, I believe. They ran it down and kicked a field goal. And then the last 6 games of the season, 6 losses, all by double-digit points. And it's the fifth straight season of double-digit losses for this New York Giants team. And you have to think, just when are things going to get better for this Giants team? When are things going to start looking up? And John Mara had a press conference yesterday talking about the decisions that have been made over the past couple of years and the decisions to fire Judge and to fire Dave Gettleman. And I'm going to start on that real quick. It is an embarrassment, an absolute embarrassment to have Dave Gettleman be able to happily retire as general manager of the Giants. He was 19-46 in 4 years as general manager. And on Sunday against the Washington football team, you see his friends, you see his family down on the field, reminiscing on the memories on the time he had with the Giants. And it is an utter joke that this organization let him just willingly walk and retire into whatever life he wanted. Obviously, no one wishes someone lose their job. But look, this is the National Football League. This is a business. We're not here to say, like, good job, you tried, better luck next time. No, you failed as Giants general manager. You deserve to be fired. And 19-46 is not something to walk into retirement all happy. That is the worst record in NFL for any general manager. And look, it just makes no sense that the Mara family, that Steve Tisch, the Giants organization, let Dave Gettleman just walk away without being fired like Jerry Reese. Joe Judge absolutely deserved to be fired as well. Look, I'm going to start off with the Washington football team thing, that 3rd and 9 call in a victory formation on the 4-yard line. What are we doing here? And even John Mara made a comment about that, saying that was not his favorite type of play call in that situation. And look, that was a questionable press conference, in my opinion, kind of dodging the retirement/fired question 2 or 3 times. But to have him come out and say, what is going on the field? What are these play calls happening? What is Joe Judge doing? It really says what position this New York Giants team in is. Look, they're going for another head coach. And at least this time around, Mara has been very adamant. Look, last time with Gettleman, it was kind of rushed, and we were kind of pressured in that situation. They want to take their time and have a diligent and detailed interview process, and it's already started. It's going to continue over the weekend. They're currently at 9 general manager candidates, and I don't think that list is going to stop. I think there's still a couple more in the pipeline that they want to interview. But as long as the general manager, which John Mara said has the capabilities to hire any head coach he wants, then can it get much worse than the Gettleman Judge era? I mean, I'm not too sure. Look, there's so many people that are available for this head coaching opportunity. Look, no names have been mentioned, but Kellen Moore, Dan Quinn, Brian Flores, someone who just got fired in Miami after going on a 7-game win streak, is absurd to me. And it's just funny that he gets fired on a Monday, on Black Monday, and then Joe Judge has his job one day longer and gets fired on Tuesday. But Andrew, it makes perfect sense to why this happened. This Giants organization is in shambles right now. Look, they're going on another quote unquote rebuild. We don't know what the future is for Daniel Jones. We don't know what the future is for Saquon Barkley. And in the press conference yesterday, John Mara basically said, look, the future of our players are essentially up to the general manager and head coach. They have all the decisions down on the field with personnel and play calling. So look, it's up to them. And if they don't feel that Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley are good fits for this team, then they're going to move on. And I love that decision. Sure, we might have heard this type of stuff before from ownership, but I don't think the team was ever in a situation like they are now and have willingly came out and said, and then this upset about the state of the organization. And there was just no other move for the Giants to make here. And look, Joe Judge was essentially told he kept his job, and he talked himself right out of his job with that 11-minute rant after the Chicago Bears game. So it was just two moves that had to happen. Could have happened during the season. It could have happened on Monday. Could have happened on Tuesday. Whenever it happened, it just needed to happen.
To me, I mean, look, this last year, and really you can put it to the Giants they really had two separate seasons. You maybe even three. You had the beginning of the season where everyone was healthy and they were just not winning games. They were losing games, and just, you said the Falcons game, the Washington football game where Dexter Lawrence jumps off size.
Yep.
Like there was that first part of the season. Then the second part of the season was kind of in the middle, and they were winning games. You know, Daniel Jones played well against a team like the Panthers. They beat the Raiders. They beat Philly, who's in the playoffs. And you were like, they beat the Saints in New Orleans. And you felt like, okay, maybe this team's okay. And maybe Joe Judge, things are looking up. That Daniel Jones gets hurt. And I don't think they played a competitive minute of football since Daniel Jones got hurt.
They did not at all.
How can you, like, to me, my thing is that they saw Mike Glennon for every week of training camp, every week of mini camp, I believe, too. And then obviously the preseason, you came into this moment like, okay, if Daniel Jones gets hurt, this is our guy. Like, this is the guy who's going to run our offense. And that's just, look, it's not good when you have to go to Jake Fromm, who you signed off someone's practice squad to start games. And that was really, to me, the biggest problem about the season is how, and you're right, Joe Judge, to me, he had his job. If they play 1 minute of competitive football from December on, he probably still has his job. But this team was just, and I feel bad for that defense because they played pretty valiant, and they probably knew that they had to give up 0 points to win a football game, and they came out and they played hard. But I mean, that's really, really tough. And that's what happened in this Giants season. And as you said, you're starting from ground zero, which I know Giants fans are going to be celebrating, but that's a tough place to be, looking up at nothing. Because that's what really is,
You're celebrating the end of a Joe Judge, Dave Gettleman era, but how long are fans going to have to deal with this? Draft a quarterback, pay a head coach, 3 years later, do it all over again.
Because this has happened 3 times now.
Exactly.
And John Mara, he was asked that, right? Where he said, how can we trust you now? And he said, I don't expect fans to trust me. This is now, it's not a good situation right now for Giants fans. Sebastian, I want to see what you kind of had to say about this situation too.
Well, I think, it's just a terrible situation all around. I mean, put in a GM, you've got 19 wins. I think, Giants fans expected to have those 19 wins accumulated over the first 2 years. And I personally was at the Giants game on Sunday, and it was just brutal to watch because, you got a backup QB among a backup QB starting, and they couldn't even move the ball downfield, like even 10 yards. So, and then, just like the situation with Joe Judge, of course he has to be fired because I've never seen a head coach show like give up in the middle of a game. Like, all right, if you want to clear house, like during the offseason, like, sure, go ahead. But, Joe Judge, just showed that, he just kind of gave up on his team in the middle of the game. And that kind of goes to mention that, the Giants haven't played competitive football at all whatsoever. So, of course, there have to be changes made because this Giants team is just going nowhere if it stays the way it is.
I think this Giants team, I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see what this new GM does. And there are so many candidates right now. I think there's 8, so I'm not going to go through all of them. But right now, I feel like the Giants and John Mara is looking at all the good organizations, the well-run organizations in the NFL, and just trying to pick their assistant GMs or, pro player personnel people. And look, we'll see if it works. I think it's going to be interesting. This team does have some building blocks. I think the defense, everything's in place for that defense. So you're hoping Patrick Graham is like, please stay. I think that maybe the one point you're like, please, hopefully no one can pick him up. And he's not just disgruntled about this Giants team because he's a guy that's built a defense that is very, very competitive. To me, it's above average and the pieces are there. The offense, it's like, where do we even start? And to me, you start at the offensive line, and it would be interesting to see what happens. And, to go one more point, and this is really more of Dave Gettleman, because I feel Joe Judge, I mean, I think he lost his job in that final, 4 weeks, but Dave Gettleman, I think his job was lost in September when this team came out, 0-3, 0-4. And, it's really the draft job that he's done. It's just not been good. I mean, it's not he came in here and saying, okay, we're going to go to the offensive line. We're going to fix the offensive line. We're going to fix the defensive line. And that's where we're going to win games. Just not as that happened. And they drafted only one offensive lineman in the first round since he's been there. And that was Andrew Thomas, who looks like a pretty good pick, but everyone else who they've picked, whether it be Will Hernandez, who's looking like that just hasn't really worked out, whether it be injuries or level of play, Matt Pert.
The running back they chose at number 2 is not working out. That guy.
Yeah. You can go Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones. And this is a problem in New York football, period. These teams have not drafted well. And you could even talk about the bad free agent signings that Dave Gettleman has, and you can get into those, and you could do it on the other side of New York too. But football starts in the draft, and these teams just do not draft well. And whoever's coming in here to, switch this thing around, their number one thing, look, they got 2 first-round picks, 2 top 10 picks. Rarely happens. Both New York teams do.
Yeah.
Which isn't a good thing, but they do. You got to hit on these picks, whoever they may be, and I really hope it's 2 offensive players.
It's got to.
2 offensive linemen would be my that would be my dream, because I don't think there's a quarterback right now that's so much better than Daniel Jones.
Not at all.
So I would just love you put 2 offensive linemen there. You bring Jones back unless you could get a trade for a guy like Russell Wilson. I think next year's quarterback tricks, most likely this team's not going to be good next year, and you're probably going to have another good pick. So
but
if
the
you
quarterback class after this year is much better than this
Bryce
year.
Young, CJ Stroud, it's endless. And if you get one of those guys, pair them with your already set offensive line, your defense hopefully is still playing well, I think you see a way out of this. And it's not as bad, I think, as people kind of make it out to be. But I think these 2 picks are so critical to this Giants offseason, this Giants future.
Look, I want to make a quick point. John Mara said yesterday in the press conference that he thought the organization was looking up after that little win streak at the end of the 2020 season. And then he doesn't know what happened. It just went all downhill. And he actually said that the team has hit rock bottom. And I'm going to go back 3 weeks to the Eagles game. Mike Glennon, 93 yards, Jake Fromm with 25 yards. And then I'm going to go to the Bears game with a 29-3 loss. Mike Glennon, -6 passing yards. All right. And then I'm going to go forward to week 18 against the Washington football team with Jake Fromm starting, 103 yards.
What's Jake
1
Fromm?
touchdown, 2 interceptions. I mean,
it's not good. It's not.
There are plenty of teams out there who have backup quarterbacks who are competent and athletic enough and skillful enough to be NFL starting quarterbacks, even if it's on the Lions or Jaguars. But to be running out Mike Glennon and I'm not even going to put Jake Fromm into this category at this moment. I don't
think that's his fault. For him, he got thrown into a system. He was supposed to be on a practice squad in Buffalo chilling.
Absolutely. But to be running around with Mike Glennon as you're a backup quarterback, and Daniel Jones, what did he get hurt in week 15, week 14? He missed a 4 big chunk of games at the end of the season, and it's just 13,
I think.
What was expected out of this out of the roster? Look, Kenny Golladay at one point last season was the highest paid free agent during the offseason. 0 touchdowns. The Giants' first round pick, Kadarius Toney, 0 touchdowns. What is this organization supposed to do if both of their top targets, their first round pick, they don't have any touchdowns on the season? That is an embarrassment. And look, Kenny Golladay has been pretty vocal about it, but look, even week 18, Jake Fromm put a dime right into his hand and it goes right through him. And what are we doing here? That's a perfect opportunity to capitalize, get reps for one, Jake Fromm, and Kenny Golladay a touchdown. Look, congrats to Jake Fromm, lived out his dream, threw an NFL touchdown. And look, can he have success in the NFL? Sure. I'm not. Look, he didn't have much time to go the playbook. He didn't have much time to do really much. So I'm not going to put all this heat on Jake Fromm. But look, he didn't look good at all. And pretty much, except for the one game where he came in at the very last drive, he didn't look good in any other performance that he had. And this team just needs to do something. Glennon has to be gone. Fromm's got to be gone. They have to pick up a competent backup quarterback. Look, Gardner Minshew can win games for the Eagles. Sure, it was one game, then got smoked against the Cowboys. But can win games. Blake Bortles can win games. Like, there needs to be the backup quarterback's not the main issue for the Giants.
No, but there are so many backup quarterbacks. Like, they have Marcus Mariota's out there. He's going to be available. Have one of
those guys who can still play.
And that guy should be pushing Daniel Jones.
Of course.
Like, I would love to see a guy that's on that fringe starter level, because you now have to keep Jones honest. Like, I don't know, maybe they will draft a QB, and their QBs to get in this draft. I don't think this is the strongest draft, but who knows? Like, I'm not, you don't know what this new GM is going to think and, who they're going to like, but you need a Teddy Bridgewater, whether it be a Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston's out there. You need someone to push. You need guys to push Daniel Jones. And, again, I don't know. You're right. Backup quarterback is not the biggest problem with this offense. But
it's a problem that if Daniel Jones is going to be
the reason Joe Judge got fired, probably.
Exactly. If the starting quarterback is going to be out for 5 weeks, you need someone to step into that place and take the reins and be that starting quarterback. And the Giants didn't have that guy to do that.
I mean, I guess we'll just kind of have to, it's like at a certain point, I don't want to bag on this team so much time over and over again, because, I think that their actions now going forward will have to speak, for what they've done, and the free agents decisions, they're going to have to work their way out of that mess because they have like no cap space right now. But, we'll kind of have to see what happens with this team going forward. Any of you guys have any last kind of thoughts about this Giants team here going into the offseason?
I just want to say I read an article from Art Stapleton, and it had a bunch of head coaching candidates. It was Kellen Moore, Dan Quinn, Brian Flores, Eric Bieniemy, Brian Daboll, Todd Bowles, which I want nothing to do with, and Patrick Graham, which I also want nothing to do with as the Giants head coach. The Giants head coach, in my opinion, and the general manager, which has been said, needs to come from outside the organization. We can't be calling up Patrick Graham to be the head coach of this team, because look, the defense was good, sure, but
there are better candidates,
of course. But the defense also let up a ton of points this entire year. So like, what has he really shown head coaching wise that can make him a strong candidate for this job? But look, there's a ton of candidates on this team. Eric Bieniemy has proven in Kansas City that he can run a team, he can run an offense. Brian Flores, look, I'm sure, in my opinion, at least, and a lot of fans and stuff I'm reading on Twitter, Brian Flores is a strong candidate as well. After what he just did in Miami, everyone's surprised that he even got fired and lost his job. So if the Giants can reel in someone like that to run this team with those two, if they can work together with the general manager, with those 2 top 10 picks, get 2 good offensive guys, whether that's linemen, obviously not a running back or a quarterback, but really just linemen.
It's linemen.
This team can make a huge step going forward, even into next year, win 6 games, maybe win 7 games, and then work from there. But I just don't know. It looks like they're on the right track to hire a good general manager. It looks like there's going to be no more funny business. It looks like they're taking this process much more seriously than they did with Dave Gettleman coming in. And look, I just hope it succeeds. I hope the general manager and head coach, it's a plus that the general manager can pick his head coach. That's what John Mara said yesterday. He has full reins on picking who he wants, who he thinks is the best guy, and he'll approve it 99.99% of the time. And look, as long as that decision is made and the general manager can work together with him and find that head coach, then I think they can be on the right track going forward, because it literally cannot get worse than from Pat Shurmur to Dave Gettleman, to Joe Judge and Dave Gettleman. It just can't get worse.
I think the Giants in general, they got to build around the QB situation. It's like the same thing. It's like repetitive every single year. It's just like, oh, they draft Daniel Jones, and like he's hit like what every 1.5 seconds he has to get the ball out. And he's one of the most hit QBs in the league. And you go out, you draft Andrew Thomas, great. That seems the one thing that seems to be working out. But then you go out into last year's previous draft and you draft like a wide receiver in one of the early rounds. So it's basically like the feeling of, what are you doing at this point? Because it seems like nothing is changing. And, Giants fans in general just think that, up until the point in which the backups had to come in, that maybe Daniel Jones was the problem. They've given up on him. But you've never really built around Daniel Jones, and that's why he's basically hit all the time as much as he is. So, I think, with the 2 high picks that the Giants have this year, they need to be dedicated to offensive tackles. And, you guys hit it on the point with, the change in the coaching staff, the change in the front office. So I think those are the two moves that the Giants really need to focus on this offseason.
I don't necessarily think Daniel Jones is the problem, but I also don't really think he's the solution.
He's not the answer.
At this time and point. Like what has he shown in his 3 years as Giants quarterback? Sure, his interceptions was much down this year. He looked like a better quarterback this year than any other year. But what has he shown? Like obviously,
the thing about it is like, unless you're going to go out and pursue like a veteran quarterback, the Giants, they've used all their cap space, So unless the Giants really just want to go out and get a veteran quarterback, I mean, what other?
They're not going to do. Like they're not getting.
What other quarterback are you find? You're not going to find the quarterback draft class this year is not great. So you're not really going to draft another quarterback unless you screw up the draft order again. So you're stuck with Daniel Jones for at least one more year. So
which I'm fine with. Like they're not going to go out and get a Russell Wilson. That's just not possible with their cap situation. And they're also, I strongly believe that they're not going to go out and draft a quarterback or running back or wide receiver with any of those top 2 picks that they have in the top 10. I firmly believe that this new general manager will know what needs to get done, and it will be offensive linemen that they pick, at least with one of them, maybe not both, but
maybe defensive line's another area, but at least you're solidifying the areas of football where you have to build first, which wouldn't be the worst.
And I firmly believe that this new GM will get that message and get that memo from the organization and from the fan base. And one of those picks will be an offensive lineman at least, and the other will be either another offensive lineman or a defensive lineman or something of need, not a running back, not a wide receiver.
And that's, I think this is the last thing I want to say about the Giants is Dave Gettleman. I don't think going into last year, he thought this offensive line was solid. He thought the defensive line was solid, and he thought it was time to throw a lot of money at a receiver, throw a lot of money at a cornerback with Adoree Jackson. And this team was just not ready for that. They didn't have that luxury to go give $70 million to Kenny Golladay,
who scored 0 touchdowns.
But there's a reason for that, because the team wasn't like, they weren't ready for Kenny Golladay. They weren't ready. They didn't need Adoree Jackson. I think Darnay Holmes, whoever was there could have done a fine enough job for this team to win 4 games. Like
their offensive linemen scored more touchdowns than Kenny Golladay.
Which is a problem.
Matt Pert gets ran over on the line every time he's out there. He's a liability out there. And
you pick Kadarius Toney when you could have picked a guy like Rashawn Slater, who's, lighting it up right now, had a great year with the Chargers. And I know that helps you get a pick now. And now you have 2 first-round picks. But Kadarius Toney, I mean, another guy that I think he has a ton of talent.
Of course.
Nobody can get the ball to him. Nobody can draw plays to get the ball to him. So it's like, why do we have these guys?
Because he's never on the field. The guy's injured.
And he's always injured.
Week after week. It's not even like he's nursing a shoulder injury. It's an Achilles. It's a leg. There's 6 different injuries with this guy. And sure, I think he has so much talent. And I think he can be a lethal weapon for this Giants offense. But he can't stay healthy to save his life. He's always off the field.
And then you have Saquon Barkley, who I think looked better at the end of the season, but another guy that you picked 2nd overall. And he once in generational talent. That's what everyone said. He was next Barry Sanders. He hasn't been.
He's not the best running back on the Giants. He is not the best running back of the Giants this season. Devontae Booker was better than him in all facets of the game. And all you hear game after game, when I'm at the stadium, they announce like the yardage and stuff over the loudspeaker. You always hear 28-yard rush, 28-yard running catch by Devontae Booker, and a 2-yard gain by Saquon Barkley, a 1-yard loss by Saquon Barkley. It's all you hear time after time, 2-yard, 3-yard, 1-yard loss. He was not the best running back on this team, and it's just so sad and unfortunate that obviously, like you said, Andrew, he was given that once-in-a-generational talent line. Is he? It looks like
the other running back in his draft, Jonathan Taylor, who got picked 35 picks after. He's looking like the generational talent.
Looks like a pretty big bust to me.
It's again, I think that's just a lot of the Giants. Look, they have some issues, but they have some talent. I will say the defense has talent. The offense,
Blake Martinez will be back.
Yeah, Blake Martinez will be back. I think the offense, when that offensive line is fixed, if you can fix it a little bit, I think it will be playable. I don't think it's going to be the worst in the league like it was this year, but